This is episode 6 of Paddle Showdown, a series where we compare paddles head to head. Though this time we'll be doing something different, and we'll be comparing paddles from different companies, but with similar technology to see how they compare. The first paddle is the Vatic Pro Alchemy, which was released earlier last year. It introduced the concept of having a removable edge guard at the throat hole. And going against it are the Sword and Shield J1 and J1H from the Honolulu Pickleball company, which also utilized this removable edge guard at the throat hole. Now, originally I was going to review these two separately, but because I kept referencing the Alchemy in the review, I thought it would be better to compare them all head to head. Let's start by taking a look at the paddle dimensions. Upon first look, you can tell that the shape and design of the paddles are different, but the overall dimensions are very similar. They're all elongated with 16.5 inches in length and 7.5 inches in width, though the Alchemy has a 5.5 inch handle, while the Sword and Shield paddles both have a 5.75 inch handle. The Alchemy also comes in 16 and 13.5 mm core thickness variants, while the J1 and J1H only come in 16 mm for now, so we'll only be comparing the 16 mm Alchemy to these paddles. As for their designs, the Alchemy has a curved top and a smaller throat hole compared to the J1 and J1H paddles, which have a wider throat hole and a more rectangular paddle face. One last thing is that both the J1 and Alchemy have carbon fiber surfaces, while the J1H actually uses a composite surface, but we'll get more into that later. Let's start by taking a look at the maneuverability of the paddles, or how quick they are to swing. My Alchemy came in with a swing weight of 122, while the J1 and J1H were both slightly higher at 126 and 127 respectively. Now, if you remove the rubber edge guard at the throat hole for the Alchemy, this actually decreases the swing weight slightly by 2 points to 120. There's a more noticeable difference when you remove the edge guard on the Sword and Shield paddles because the throat hole and the edge guard that covers it are both larger, and its removal drops the swing weight numbers by 4 points to 122 for the J1 and 123 for the J1H. But overall, it's the Alchemy that comes out ahead with the lower swing weight numbers because of its arrow curve design, so it takes the maneuverability category. Next up, let's look at the power. So we'll measure this by how much force we can apply to the ball with a full swing. The higher swing weight of the J1 and J1H paddles give them the edge in the power category here, but it's the composite surface of the J1H that makes the power noticeably higher than the J1 and the Alchemy. In fact, I think it's one of the most hardest hitting 16 mm paddles I've ever used. The Honolulu Pickleball company hasn't specified what exactly is in the surface, but I have a feeling there's definitely some fiberglass in there to provide that extra juice, which makes it overpower the other two paddles, so for power, we will be giving this to the J1H. Moving on to the pop category, let's look at how quickly the ball comes off the paddle face with little to no movement, like blocks and punch volleys. The J1 and Alchemy honestly feel identical off the face. They both have this plush and springy feel to them that's unique to paddles that have this throat hole. They basically felt the same to me side by side, and I would say the pop between them is a tie. However, the J1H is not only more powerful, but it does have more pop from that composite surface. One interesting thing to note is that when you remove the throat guard on all these paddles, you also increase the paddle stiffness and pop, but at the cost of some stability. Because the edge guard is larger on the J1 and J1H, this difference is more noticeable when switching between the two configurations, but for this category, it's the J1H that comes out ahead. As for the sweet spot and stability, let's take a look at their twist weight numbers. The Alchemy's twist weight with the edge guard on is 6.67, and it drops to 6.49 with it removed. For the J1 and J1H, this number also drops a bit more, from 6.91 to 6.6, and 7.01 to 6.75 respectively. Overall, these numbers are higher on the Sword and Shield paddles, and I do think that they do have sweet spots that are just a tad bit larger, so I will give this category to them as well. Lastly, let's take a look at the spin. The carbon fiber surface of the Alchemy and the J1 produce identical spin that's around the 1800s in RPM. The composite surface of the J1H produces slightly higher RPM numbers in the low 2000s, but in terms of durability of the grit, that's something I haven't been able to measure. But for a new paddle with fresh grit, I am giving this category to the J1H. So when comparing just the J1 itself to the Alchemy, the difference is very small. The J1 is basically just the Alchemy with more power and stability, but the Alchemy is slightly quicker, and you can also go for the 13.5mm option for even more maneuverability. Meanwhile, with the Sword and Shield paddles, you can go with the J1H, which has more of a significant difference in both the power and pop, and with a slight upgrade in spin. I think the larger throat hole allows the Sword and Shield paddles to be more customizable, since it does affect the swing weight and twist weight a bit more. However, the throat guard on the Alchemy paddles are much easier to remove and replace compared to the J1 and J1H. I've been told that the Sword and Shield edge guard gets easier to replace the more you do it because it will loosen up more, but right now mine are incredibly stiff to the point where it's very difficult to replace, which has made me not really want to mess with it too much. In terms of the price, both are basically the same. The Vatic Pro paddle retails for $180, while the J1 and J1H retail for $185. They're all interesting paddles, and the removable edge guard is a fun concept that allows for customization. I think the J1H is the more exciting one since it's the most different on the market and one of the hardest hitting paddles out there, while the J1 and Alchemy have this unique feel to them. You'll either really like it or you'll prefer the feel of a Gen 2 without the throat hole, so it really depends on your feel with them when you try them. If you do want to pick up any of these paddles, I've included discount codes and the link in the video description below that will drop the price down even more.
To be fair, you scared me. I didn't want to hit the ball at you. So,